Good afternoon all. Myself Soma Gupta, Senior Nursing Officer, presently working as in charge of Neurosurgery ICU, AIMS Bhubaneswar. Today I am going to discuss about monitoring critically ill patients and investigations. Now coming to the objective. At the end of this session, the participants will gain knowledge and able to monitor critically ill patients with confidence. Now, let's start the topic. Whom do we say critically ill patients? Critically ill patients means their injury or illness is life-threatening. So they need intensive care unit for close monitoring and treatment. Now, what is monitoring? Monitoring is continuous observation to check the progress or deterioration of a patient over a period of time and is a crucial part of care of critically ill patients. So, why monitoring is necessary? Monitoring ensures rapid detection of changes in the clinical status. It allows for accurate assessment of progress, deterioration and therapeutical response. Now coming to hemodynamic monitoring. So first we will discuss about continuous ECG monitoring. ECG is the graphical representation of electrical activities of heart. It monitors rate and rhythm of heart. The normal heart rate is 60 to 100 beats per minute. It allows detection of changes in heart rate, rhythm, conduction and is essential in detection of life-threatening arrhythmias. A normal ECG waveform consists of P wave, QRS complex and T wave. Normal sinus rhythm refers to normal heartbeat originating from SA node. What is sinus bradycardia? Bradycardia is defined as a heart rate slower than 60 beats per minute. Sinus bradycardia is a common condition found in both healthy individuals and athletes. Bradycardia can be seen in patients with raised intracranial pressure. What is sinus tachycardia? Sinus tachycardia is heart rate more than 100 beats per minute when individual is at rest. Tachycardia can be seen in fever, sepsis, hyperthyroidism, etc. Coming to arrhythmias. First is atrial flutter. In atrial flutter, the arteria beat regularly but faster than normal and more often than the ventricles. So you may have 4 atrial beats to 1 ventricular beat. So a sawtooth pattern with QRS complex is seen. And in atrial fibrillation, absent P waves with irregular QRS complexes. The basic difference is in atrial fibrillation, the atria beat irregularly and in atrial flutter, the atria beat regularly but faster than normal. Now ventricular tachycardia. Ventricular tachycardia is absent P wave with wide QRS complexes and a faster heart rate. Next is ventricular fibrillation. Ventricular fibrillation is the most important shockable rhythm. The ventricles suddenly attain to contract at rates of up to 500 beats per minute. This rapid and irregular activity renders the ventricles unable to contract in a synchronized manner, resulting in immediate loss of cardiac output. Ventricular fibrillation is a life-threatening arrhythmia and can lead to death of patient. Second is blood pressure monitoring. What is blood pressure? Blood pressure is the pressure of circulating blood against the walls of blood vessels. Blood pressure is expressed in terms of systolic pressure over diastolic pressure. BP monitoring is done to make sure that the end organs are perfused. Ideal BP is considered to be between 90 by 60 mm of mercury to 120 by 80 mm of mercury. It can be measured intermittently with a cuff or continuously with an arterial line. In this picture, you can see the arterial waveforms. The measuring apparatus consists of an arterial cannula connected to a tubing containing continuous column of saline which conducts the pressure wave to the transducer. The arterial line is also connected to a flushing system consisting of a 500 ml bag of heparinized saline pressurized up to 300 mm of mercury via a flushing device. Second is transducer. Transducer converts one form of energy to another. The transducer should be placed in flavostatic axis, that is fourth intercostal space mid-axillary line. And third is the monitor. The monitor displays the arterial waveform on a screen. In this slide, you can see normal arterial pulsation waveform. The highest point is the systolic pressure, the lowest point is the diastolic pressure, and the dicrotic notch is due to closure of aortic valve. Sometimes we can see some troubleshooting waveforms. Either arterial waveform is overdamped or underdamped. There are a number of causes of an overdamped waveform. Tiny air bubbles in the tubing, a clot at the tip of catheter, a catheter that is positioned against wall of blood vessel. An underdamped trace is characterized by a high initial spike in the waveform. It may be due to excessive length of tubing, multiple use of stopcocks, or some patient conditions like tachycardia. Now we will discuss about advantages of invasive arterial BP monitoring. Continuous beat-to-beat blood pressure monitoring is useful in patients who are likely to display sudden changes in BP. For example, head injury patients, patients receiving inotrope supports like noradrenaline or adrenaline. The technique allows accurate blood pressure readings at low pressures, for example, patients in shock. IBP measurement allows accurate assessment of BP in certain patients not suitable for non-invasive BP monitoring. For example, patients with gross peripheral edema in intensive care unit or morbidly obese patients. The indwelling arterial cannula is convenient for repeated arterial blood sampling, but this is not the sole reason for insertion of an indwelling catheter. And the disadvantages are arterial cannula is a potential source of infection and can lead to local thrombosis. Central venous pressure. Central venous pressure is considered as direct measurement of blood pressure in the right atrium and vena cava. It is used to assess cardiac preload and volume status in critically ill patients. It assists in diagnosis of right-sided heart failure and acts as a guide for fluid resuscitation. It is measured in internal jugular vein, subclavian vein, reflecting right arterial pressure. The normal range of central venous pressure is 8 to 12 mm of mercury, and in case of ventilated patient, it is 12 to 16 mm of mercury. Come to the normal CVP waveform. You can note that the wave has three peaks, A, C and V, and two descents, X and Y. A, the rise in arterial pressure caused by atrial systole. C is the ventricular contraction causes the tricuspid valve to bulge upwards into the right atrium. It corresponds to R wave. X, the decrease in pressure in the right atrium as tricuspid valve moves away from the right atrium during ejection of blood from the right ventricle. V, the peak in arterial pressure during ventricular systole when the tricuspid valve is closed. Y, the tricuspid valve opens and blood rapidly empties into the right ventricle during the diastole. We will discuss about respiratory monitoring. First is oxygen saturation. Oxygen saturation is a non-invasive method for monitoring a person's blood oxygen saturation using a sensor probe. Its normal range is more than 95% in room air. It requires adequate perfusion for accuracy. Erroneously low readings may be caused by hypoperfusion of extremity used for monitoring. It is due to a limb being cold or vasoconstriction secondary to use of vasopressor agents during shivering or in case of rapid movements in restless or pediatric patients. And application of nail pins may also result in erroneous reading of oxygen saturation. Next is ABG, that is arterial blood gas analysis. An ABG test requires small volume of blood drawn from artery in a heparinized syringe. It is one of the most common tests performed on patients in ICU. There are four important components of ABG, that is pH, PO2, partial pressure of oxygen, PCO2, partial pressure of carbon dioxide, and HCO3, that is bicarbonate. pH. pH determines the acidity or alkalinity of blood. Its normal range is 7.35 to 7.45. PaO2, it determines the hypoxemia level of blood. Its normal range is more than 90 mm of mercury. Partial pressure of carbon dioxide, that is PCO2, it determines the acidity of blood. Its normal range is 35 to 45 mm of mercury. And last is bicarbonate. It determines the basicity of blood. Its normal range is 18 to 24 milliequivalent per liter. Here, PCO2 is respiratory component and HCO3 is metabolic component. PO2 by FiO2 ratio measures the accuracy of gas exchange. If PO2 by FiO2 ratio is less than 300 mm of mercury, then we can say patient is having ARDS, that is acute respiratory distress syndrome. Increased lactate concentration and metabolic acidosis indicates inadequate tissue oxygenation. Lactate is also increased in liver failure and sepsis. And we can check electrolytes in ABG. Come to capnography. Capnography is direct monitor of inhaled and exhaled concentration or partial pressure of carbon dioxide. Capnography is more effective than clinical judgment alone in early detection of adverse respiratory events such as hypoventilation, esophageal intubation, circuit disconnection. During procedures done under sedation, capnography is very useful. It is usually presented as a graph of expiratory carbon dioxide. When the measurement is taken at the end of a breath, it is called end tidal carbon dioxide. It is denoted as EtCO2. Its normal range is 35 to 45 mm of mercury. It provides a rapid and reliable method to detect life-threatening conditions. Coming to organ and tissue oxygenation. First is core peripheral temperature. Temperature is used as an index of peripheral perfusion. The colder the periphery is, the less the perfusion will be. The normal temperature range is 97 to 99 degree Fahrenheit. Hypothermia and hyperthermia both indicates sepsis. Second is urine output. Urine output is a sensitive indicator of renal perfusion, provided the kidneys are not damaged. Normal is 0.5 to 1 ml per kg body weight. Third is neurological monitoring. Neurological monitoring should be done using Glasgow Coma Scale. It consists of 3 components: verbal response, motor response and eye opening. The highest score is 15 and the lowest score is 3. Patients should be assessed by GCS scale in ICUs. Now coming to second part of discussion, that is investigations in critically ill patients. The investigations are CBC, RFT, LFT, LDH, CRP, IL-6, D-dimer, serum ferritin and procalcitonin. Complete blood count. Hemoglobin. It is done to check oxygen carrying capacity of blood. The normal range of hemoglobin in male is 13.8 to 17.2 gram per deciliter, and in females hemoglobin is 12 to 15 gram per deciliter. Then white blood cell count. It is done to detect infection. The normal range is 4,500 to 11,000 WBCs per microliter. Platelet count. Platelet count is done to check coagulation status. Normal range is 1.5 lakh to 4 lakh platelets per microliter. Either an underlying medical condition is causing the reduced level of platelet or any medication can lead to decreased platelet count. Renal function test. There are several components of renal function test. These are blood urea nitrogen. The normal range is 10 to 40 mg per dl. Creatinine 0.5 to 1.5 mg per dl. Sodium 135 to 145 milliequivalent per liter. Potassium 3.5 to 5 milliequivalent per liter. Chloride 97 to 107 milliequivalent per liter. It is commonly seen that in COVID-19 patients there is increased value of blood urea nitrogen and creatinine. It has been observed that COVID-19 patients are more prone to acute kidney injury. So let's discuss about mechanism of AKI in COVID-19. The cause of kidney involvement in COVID-19 is likely to be multifactorial, with cardiovascular comorbidity and predisposing factors such as sepsis, hypovolemia and nephrotoxins. COVID-19 pneumonia might lead to kidney congestion and subsequent acute kidney injury. Similarly, left ventricular dysfunction may lead to low cardiac output, arterial underfilling and kidney hypoperfusion. Additionally, COVID-19 virus can directly infect renal tubular epithelium and podocytes through an angiotensin converting enzyme 2 dependent pathway and cause mitochondrial dysfunction, acute tubular necrosis, glomerulopathy and protein leakage in Bowman's capsule. Acute kidney injury involves COVID virus related immune response dysregulation as indicated by observed lymphopenia and cytokine release syndrome, that is cytokine storm. Liver function test. In LFT, we measure the following things: bilirubin, SGOT, SGPT, albumin, globulin, ALP. Increase SGOT, SGPT and decrease in albumin is seen in COVID-19 patients. Generally, SGOT and SGPT is raised in liver damage from toxins like alcohol, use of analgesics, gallbladder disease and hepatitis. SGOT and SGPT are inflammatory markers. Drug-induced liver injury should be taken into consideration, especially after the use of acetaminophen, ritonavir, remdesivir. The mechanisms underlying abnormal LFTs in COVID-19 are likely to be multifactorial and related to a hyperinflammatory status and thrombotic microtherapy. Decrease in albumin is due to poor nutrition or sepsis, but it has been seen that decreased albumin can prolong hospital stay of ICU patients. There are some specific tests done for COVID-19 patients. These are serum ferritin. Serum ferritin indicates inflammation. Normally, serum ferritin is elevated in obesity, liver disease and alcohol abuse patients. The normal range is for males 12 to 300 mg per ml, for female 12 to 150 mg per ml. Hyperferritinemia is seen in COVID-19 patients. What happens? This coronavirus causes inflammation, and due to inflammation there is cytokine storm. Cytokines are large group of proteins, peptides or glycoprotein that are secreted by specific cells of immune system. Cytokines are a category of signaling molecules that mediate and regulate immunity and inflammation. COVID-19 infection is accompanied by an aggressive inflammatory response with release of large amount of pro-inflammatory cytokines. This is known as cytokine storm. This cytokine storm leads to release of increased ferritin, and this increased ferritin can cause organ damage. Interleukin 6. Interleukin 6 is potential biomarker of COVID-19 progression. It is pro-inflammatory cytokine and an anti-inflammatory myokine. Its normal range is 0 to 16.4 picogram per milliliter. It is also increased in COVID-19 patients. Then lactic acid dehydrogenase, LDH. LDH is released during tissue damage. LDH should be monitored for any signs of disease progression and decompensation. Its normal range is 140 to 280 units per liter in adults. It is also increased in COVID-19 patients. CRP. CRP is C-reactive protein. It increases in response to inflammation. Its normal range is less than 10 mg per liter. It is also increased in COVID-19 patients. D-dimer. D-dimer is characteristic degeneration products of cross-linked fibrin. D-dimer is done to rule out venous thrombotic events like deep vein thrombosis or pulmonary embolism. Elevated D-dimer is not normal. It is usually found after a clot has formed and is in process of breaking down, but it does not tell the location or cause. The range is 0 to 500 nanogram per milliliter. It is also increased in COVID-19 patients. And last is procalcitonin. It is a biomarker to assess the risk of bacterial infection and disease progression. The normal range is 0.1 to 0.49 nanogram per milliliter. It is also increased in COVID-19 patients. I have collected lab report of 63 years old male COVID-19 positive patient admitted in our hospital. Here you can see interleukin 6, ferritin and LDH level is raised with urea of 104 mg per dl. Now coming to chest X-ray. Serial chest X-ray to be done for all intensive care unit patients. Chest X-ray shows ground glass opacity in COVID-19 patients. The most common changes in the lung include consolidation, that means accumulation of fluid or tissue in pulmonary alveoli presenting gas exchange. There are some special points which need to be monitored carefully in COVID-19 patients. Avoid too much positive balance, more frequent fluid challenges, beware of very high PEEP, pulmonary embolism as a new cause of onset of shock, and monitor right ventricular function. So today we have discussed regarding investigations and monitoring of critically ill patients. If anyone having doubts related to the topic can ask directly or chat through chat box. Thank you.